We get our weekly groceries delivered through Instacart because once football season starts, game time is family time. I can get everything my family needs for the week, from reliable staples to specialty ingredients, all delivered right to my door in as fast as 1 hour. So I can stay on my game without missing a minute of the game. Visit instacart.com or download the app to get free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum order $10. Additional terms apply. Instacart. Add life to cart.
For anyone who's listening now, you want to learn more about your own PK psychic abilities. Ingo Swann is the master. Okay, so, and Elly is your connection. I'm talking with Elly Flippen, and she's the niece of Ingo Swann. The cool thing about that is that she's the niece of Ingo Swann, all right? My favorite story when we talked before, we're just going to dive right in, was when Ingo gave her a warning about a certain intersection. So, Elly, when you have an uncle like that who has all these abilities, did he explain immediately why, or did he just tell you so you could go out and discover what was the different unique thing about that intersection?
Well, it was quite a warning. He was very explicit in that it was a warning. It was a directive, and anybody who knew, my uncle knew that if there were directives, you followed them to the T. So it was he could be very intimidating in that manner. So I didn't really want to cross him, literally. I didn't want to cross the street, and I didn't want to cross him because it was such a powerful thing. At other times, he would always say, carry something with you, such as money, if something happens, or give advice about how to traverse the world of New York City at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that was more general in nature, just common sense for living in an urban area. But this explicitly was ultra normal, beyond normal, in that he could see something at that intersection and actually had things he could point to where accidents happened. Pedestrians actually were hit numerous times. There were several accidents. So it was really supported in hard facts at the end of the day.
Okay, we're going to, just to back up a little bit here, Ingo Swann, known as the grandfather of remote viewing, and Ingo's niece Elly is in charge of the estate and all of the things that are coming out now. Several books being put out posthumously. One of them we're going to talk about is the Wendy song. It's a story of reincarnation, and it's a fabulous novel, short novel. You can read it in a GIF. Anyway, Preserving the Psychic Child, we talked about that before, but also another one to check out is Penetration, the special edition. This has an extra chapter, chapter 9, which deals with the remote viewing of Mars. Psychic Literacy, fantastic book. I love that because it includes some of the things he talks about learning as a child, the communal psychic capabilities. When a group of people, like if one person says, hey, I see this and maybe it's coming, well, that's okay. But when several people all tune into the same thing and say, all right, I'm getting a sense, and he calls it in the book, they had an itch. They didn't really think about psychic stuff. They called it an itch, and they were right. Mm-hmm. So I love that. We'll come back to some of this. But with this, there's so much with his information and being part of the remote viewing program, working with the CIA. There's on CIA.gov, there's a dynamic PK experiment with Ingo Swann talking about his abilities to change the numbers on a machine. I'm just going to put it that way because they're trying to get the physics to apply to this to see if he makes an impression. And sitting through 2 steel walls between him and this unit, he's able to make an impression. So these are studies that validate his ability, and the remote viewing is what he specialized in. As I'm doing this own, my stuff, he calls it, and it's maybe written down somewhere, applied knowing, where it's already something we are inherently born with, but getting through the programming of thinking, oh, this is just an accident, oh, it isn't important, oh, it can't do, all that stuff of belittling and demeaning the ability because it's intimidating when you're around somebody like Ingo and he just says, okay, don't go to that intersection, and you know why. Then this is real. So I just wanted to, for anyone who's listening now, you want to learn more about your own PK psychic abilities. Ingo Swann is the master. Okay, so, and Elly is your connection. Thank you, Elly. Wendy Song is the book on reincarnation. It's an excellent novel. Where did this come from?
He actually wrote this short story in the early 70s, and it sat for a long time in a box, like so many things of his, in his office, just waiting for the right time to come out. I know he did try with several publishers to publish it. He probably got close at some point to being able to publish it, but there was never an appetite, I think, for this story, this narrative to be told in the way that it was. The underlying story is really the story of reincarnation, and it's told through different characters, probably representing different viewpoints of the discussion on reincarnation and the societal impact of just even talking about reincarnation. And so different characters play different roles in this debate. And it's a story of the debate and ultimately a coming together of a family and multiple families, which makes it just the most beautiful story at the end for me, and one that every time I read it, I cry. Just because it is such a beautiful story and the debate that takes place and unfolds throughout it.
Well, yeah, there are a couple of characters I really don't like. Just right out front, and I know that's their point and that's their purpose, and I don't like them, and it worked. Ooh. And so they're not helpful. And but the story, it's amazing now, especially it was written in the 70s. And so when we've had these other stories of reincarnation coming out and being publicized, there's a wonderful tie-in, because this gives you what it might be like to be in a family where someone comes through and has all these memories, and other people are trying to even consciously figure out how that works and integrate that, because it isn't their awareness and it isn't their knowing, so it must not be true. But when you're around somebody who continues to bring forth these memories and this accurate information, then you start to question, well, why am I doubting? What is the cognitive dissonance here about? And that, I think, is what we're dealing with as a society. And he's saying, if it hasn't started already, it's coming, the psychic renaissance. What do you feel now? There's this big book coming out, and we're going to let's go ahead and drop that information with the International Remote Viewing Conference that's coming up, and Nick Cook is going to be presenting Ingo's works. This is fantastic.
Yes. So in our process, so we worked with Nick Cook. He's a journalist and writer. He writes a number of stories under his own name. He also ghost writes and helps families tell stories of an individual who might be in their family who has a story to tell or a narrative to tell. And actually, just to backtrack, very early on, we were working on an Ingo Swann documentary. And as part of that process, it started when Ingo was alive. And Ingo said, there's one person that I want to have interview me for this documentary, and that one person is Nick Cook. And that was because of a book he had written called The Hunt for Zero Point Energy. Mm-hmm. Having been an aviation journalist initially, and then just kind of being introduced to this world very early on, and then following the breadcrumbs along there to end up with this book on Zero Point Energy. And Ingo, having read that, said, there's this one person I want to tell my story, and that's Nick Cook. And so Nick, very early on, was the interviewer in this documentary process. So after Ingo passed away, we just kind of kept that and really brought Nick in to tell the story of Ingo, to write a biography of Ingo. And what we found in the process is there's so much already out on Ingo. There's not a substantial amount that we could add that Ingo hasn't already himself put out there. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't want to take away from what Ingo had put out. And thought, okay, well, what's another means? And while we're thinking about this, part of the information that we had given to Nick was a series of miscellaneous folders and papers and stuff, so he could get kind of a flavor of Ingo's writings and who he was and whatnot. And within this, he found a series of folders together, which was a kind of haphazard manuscript for something Ingo called Secrets of Psychic Revelation. And so he started to really use that as part of his basis to understanding Ingo's take on consciousness as a whole. And while that's happening, I came across another manuscript that we had actually given to the University of West Georgia, where Ingo's archives are located, and it was called The Emerald Kingdom. Mm-hmm. And we found some crossover and some uniqueness, but very different, but working on the same pathways for these two different manuscripts. And Nick was able to bring this together, these two manuscripts, into one I would say, holding place to think about, okay, all of this is about Ingo's concept on human consciousness and what we have and how we can gain it.
Hold on. Just a minute. Just that cut out just a little bit. So it's all about consciousness?
All about human consciousness and all the facets that may entail. So Nick was able to carve away and to place it. And I like to think of this book like a Russian nesting doll, where there's a big one and you pull a layer off and a layer off and a layer off. And so what Nick has done is created this I guess compendium of these two works and renamed them and written before and after. So there's a narrative from Nick. It's called Ingo Swann's Great Lost, what we call Resurrecting the Mysterious.
Okay, hold on.
And
hold on. And the book is called?
It's called Resurrecting the Mysterious, Ingo Swann's Great Lost Work.
My guest is Elly Flippen, Ingo Swann's niece, talking about the lost works that are being combined. And Nick Cook is doing or has done a fantastic job of pulling this all together. And that's what's going to be presented, the information, the background on that, at the International Remote Viewing Conference. And this is fantastic. Because of all the COVID stuff, they're doing it online. And I'm like, well, this couldn't happen any better, because I couldn't go to Las Vegas, and that's where this thing is always held. This is giving it, I think, a wider viewing. And especially with this new works coming out from Ingo, that ought to be a fantastic presentation. So again, Elly Flippen is my guest. What's the name of the book?
It's called Resurrecting the Mysterious, Ingo Swann's Great Lost Work.
And a bunch of file folders that he just happened to have set aside. And it's, those kind of things. He has so many little gems. I want to go back real quick, that the communal psychic capabilities. And this is from his book, Psychic Literacy. And in there, he talked about, learning from other people and being able to connect the dots. And the ancients had a way of using multiple seers, multiple oracles, multiple visionaries, multiple psychics to try and get a better grip on what they might see for the future, to foretell, to prognosticate. And what they did then was to compare notes and see if they had a common thread. So he said this wasn't anything new to him, because when he was growing up in Telluride, the community, being a mining community and the possibility of avalanches in the area just getting to and from, there were a lot of hazards that they had to duck and cover from. And one of the things that the community would do, just on their own, without calling it anything special, except I've got an itch or an idea or a feeling or a sense, was one person would say, I have this, and then another person would say, and there were a couple times that he wrote that this was incredible. The phones would start ringing as the lines start connecting, and they would say, there's something going to happen, an avalanche in this area. And then they would shut the mine down because there were several people. And another day it was the school, that they shut the school down. It was not a cloud in the sky. Everything was all beautiful. And then these things would come to pass. So he considered this just a natural part of growing up. It wasn't weird. It wasn't odd. It wasn't unusual. It was just life. And that, I think, gave him an edge with his own abilities. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, yeah.
So with this, in Ingo Swann's Lost Work, this is just coming onto the market now. People will be able to get it after the presentation?
After the presentation, yes. And it has been a labor of immense love, because it is very raw. It was very raw. It was just notes, some chapters, and taking two different manuscripts, if you will, even though there are similarities, to take them and to combine them and then to write narrative around that. This book is well over 500 pages.
Oh, wow. Yeah, That's a lot of meat.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I mean, and it is heavy, and it's heavy in the sense of bringing forth, like you said, that applied knowing, reaching back and knowing there's all of this stuff that's around us. It's completely all around us, but we've been trained not to pay attention to it. Not to believe in it.
Yes, that's the sad part. Yes. He really does a wonderful, and I'm talking about Ingo stuff, and especially that psychic literacy, of laying ground rules and a way of activating your inner sense, that already awareness that you have that just hasn't been brought to light. His approach wasn't like it was foreign and you had to go through a certain step-by-step process and you could only go so far because, there were certain rules and structure. Nobody really knows how to teach it because it isn't something that is taught. It's something that is applied, and bringing it forth and activating. Pay attention, slow down, look at your surroundings. Feel what your body is telling you. Are you getting hints and clues? Does somebody have a miracle that happened to them and they had a miracle healing? That's a really good example in there. Do you know you remember what I'm talking about with this one? Yeah. Explain that. Explain that one.
In the new book, Resurrecting the Mysterious, some of it seems to be written at the same time as psychic literacy. And the young boy with the fish skin disease, that's the one where it's highlighted in both psychic literacy and in Resurrecting the Mysterious. And he approached it like he had the ability to change that fact with his mind, that you could think these things away. Everybody has that ability to heal themselves in some way. And this young man believed that it could be healed, and it was healed. That through, I guess, hypnosis, that I can heal this. This doctor can heal it. The young boy believed he could heal it. That conveyed to his body that he could heal it himself, and it was gone. And it wasn't really until the boy became cognizant of the fact that maybe this wasn't normal that it ceased to work.
Yes. That's a huge problem, because then the mind comes in and says, oops, you didn't really do what you did. And then you undo your programming, or you put a block in it anyway. And the one thing I've learned in doing my own improving is that the minute you allow someone else to determine your program, you lose your power, because then it's under their rules and their game. And as long as you're the one writing your program, anything's possible. And you have to learn your own fine print. When do you have a better ability, a better awareness, a connection that's stronger? And that also goes with, I really like the fact that he also tuned into astrology and said, this isn't mumbo jumbo. This stuff works. And isn't it funny when the scientists figure out that it works? Ha ha.
Well, it's all energies, right? And he spends time in psychic literacy and a great deal of time in Resurrecting the Mysterious talking about forces and the constructive and destructive power of both of those. And for astrology, he was an avid astrologer, I would think, a grandmaster type astrologer. He would say he's very hesitant to tell people what was going to happen, because he felt like people then could manifest that happening themselves.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? And so what do you think? We talked about this last time. What do you think? Because he really hated that, where people could take something and then internalize that and make it happen for themselves. Because that, obviously down deep, we have those abilities to manifest things, to make things happen, to heal ourselves, to have so many more senses and awarenesses than we have learned, because that information's been kept from us.
Yes. Again, my guest is Elly Flippen. She's a niece of Ingo Swann. And absolutely, I've experienced these things. One thing I read about, if you're going to be a shaman, if you're going to be a healer, if you're going to do any kind of PSI work, the first thing you do is work on yourself. And the minute you realize you can heal yourself, you've opened a floodgate of new abilities and new awareness and new learning and new ideas and new programming. And that's what Ingo Swann, and I believe, can help us connect to and reinforce that we are the ones here creating our reality. And when we tap into that knowing, then there's a whole new ballgame. I feel like I know him just because of reading the information and having these little connections with, I was walking through the house thinking about, and I didn't realize this at the time, I was thinking about Ingo, and I think it was when I think the Wendy song was there, but I don't think I had the Purple Fables, which was what I was looking at. And all of a sudden I had a card in my hand and it dropped on the floor, like somebody had pulled the card out of my hand and dropped on the floor. And I thought, because then I'd had a few other things that were happening, like a connect with owls and something that was supposed to be said about a piece of artwork and the book Cosmic Art that he worked on. And so I was having these little nudges and I wasn't paying any attention. And finally I said, oh my gosh, I realized what I had been thinking about, what I had been reading. I thought, that's Ingo Swann. And he said, light bulb. Okay, about time. He has a sense of humor. I have a vision of him just sitting in his, in an easy chair with a cigar, and that was when I got that he really missed his cigars. And I thought, well, I don't know what that's about. And then I opened the book, and I can't remember, but at the beginning of the book, it was something about him smoking, with a cigar, and I'm like, well, darn, that's that's it. That's the image. There he is. And then he said that, where he's at right now, the cigars aren't there, and that's just too darn. That's bad. It's just not the same. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you that I had no idea about the cigars until I read that little blurb at the beginning of one of the books, and I thought, well, no wonder he was trying to give me these messages and trying to say, keep doing this. And finally, when I got that thing pulled out of my hand, I'm like, what the heck? And said, oh, I bet that's Ingo. And it was like, yeah, light bulb, duh. I love talking with you because it inspires me. I love the connection that Ingo had, that his own sense of freedom to create, and the art that he produced is absolutely beautiful. There's one story that you told me about a work. I believe it was that's something he created, and someone else had a problem, and she put this piece of artwork under her pillow and focused on getting a solution for the problem. Can you share that story? Because that's really powerful.
So Ingo's paintings were like his children. He kept them all around him, and he never really wanted to part with them. He just kept them everywhere around his studio. I think in the 70s he did sell pieces, and he regretted it. So as he went into the 80s and into the 90s, he just kept these. But one of the paintings that he painted was he called Mother of Sorrows. It was the Mother Mary and all of the apparitions. So messages and warnings through each of the apparitions. He painted some concept of that into this painting of Mary. But a friend was able to convince him to sell it to another friend who became, in her own right, a friend of Ingo's. He always regretted that. He missed that painting terribly. So probably in his later years, just before, I think, when he was experiencing health problems and then was declining, he asked me if I could try to get that painting back. And as it turns out, just about the time when he asked this, the woman who had purchased it became mysteriously ill. Perfectly healthy, full of life, very vibrant individual. All of a sudden was in the hospital, and within a month she passed away.
Wow.
And this was at the same time he asked me to get this painting. I was like, oh, this is going to be difficult now. And then shortly thereafter, Ingo passed away. So they passed away within months of each other. Mm-hmm. And then I said, oh, this is going to be horribly difficult.
Yeah, like, okay.
Right. Like when somebody passes away, it's hard to, something that was very special to her as well to get that back. She was married. She did not have kids. And so I was trying to think strategically how to work with her, how to approach her husband to get this back. And as I was getting closer to doing that, I came to understand that her husband, in the sorrow of losing his wife so dramatically and so quickly, actually took his own life.
Wow.
And at that point I went, oh, this got a lot worse. So I don't know where I'm going to find this painting. And as I said, they didn't have kids. And so how to approach it and how to get to it. So also happening at this time, my mother had given all of Ingo's the best, his masterpiece paintings, to the American Visionary Art Museum in Baltimore. Mm-hmm. And it was their founder and director who I said, there's one more painting. There's one more painting that belongs with these. It's like the missing child, and it needs to be returned to these other paintings because Ingo wanted everything together. Yeah. So it needs to be with them. And as it turns out, that Mother of Sorrows was on the cover of Ingo's book, All of the Great Apparitions of Mary. Mm-hmm. So the original printing by Hampton Rowe, the cover was included this painting. And so she took the book and said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sleep with the book underneath my pillow because it had the painting on it. And I'm going to implore Ingo to please find a way to get this painting to the museum. Mm-hmm. And I have that in email. She's emailing me, telling me the story. This is what she's going to do. And the very next day, somewhere in this chain, right, of these two estates, the painting has ended up with another party. And this other party has now contacted through the general inquiry line to the American Visionary Art Museum. I have this painting. I think you guys will want it. Literally the very next day.
That was quick.
It was very quick. And I have, that was pretty remarkable to me. But of course, remarkable is mundane.
Right.
With Ingo Swann.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's just the tip of the iceberg.
Right. This is nothing. This is Ingo at work. So I know he's working on it. And I felt relieved. But as it turned out, he wanted to sell the painting for a great deal of money to the museum.
Yes.
And the museum is mostly a lending museum. So they have some things in their permanent collection, but they're not endowed in any way, shape, or form like major museums are, and really didn't have the resources. And he wanted a phenomenal amount of money for it. So not only, we couldn't come up with the money, they couldn't come up with the money, and we really stressed that how much everybody who had been involved in this would really have liked to see it donated to the museum.
Yeah.
At which point he became very hostile and shut off and said, fine, he was going to go sell it somewhere else. And then I said, how could this be? Right? Ingo, I didn't understand. Like, what happened? Ingo worked on it to get it to the museum. Why was there this horrible wrinkle? And how did this go bad so quickly, right? Like, everything was so lined up.
Right.
Why is it all of a sudden now we're at odds with each other, and he disappears back into wherever he came from to try to sell this. So it was at the same time that we were doing an art show at the La Mama Gallery, which is literally catty corner to where Ingo's building was on the Bowery.
Oh.
And a number of like secondary pieces doing sort of a selling show. And the curator for that was a young man who was also, worked with one of the major auction houses in New York City, but his emphasis was on new American art. And I was like, okay, if his name is attached to this show, which was called A Remote View, Ingo Swann, and he's worked with one of the major auction houses in New York, this guy tries to sell the painting, our curator is going to know about it, right? Somebody's going to come to him, and he's going to know about it. So I email him and say, FYI, by the way, here's this long backstory. Here's the drama. I've spent days crying about this because I didn't understand. So I bet he's going to try to approach you about this painting. And like all young people, he totally ignores my email.
Yeah, well, okay, fine.
Right. And but email comes, this guy does reach out to him.
He reaches out to him. Okay. Wait. This is a good cliffhanger. Okay, so here it is. All this long, drawn out drama, and all of a sudden it looks like that painting's going to slip through your hands. And Ingo supposedly on the job because it had appeared out of nowhere after she put it under her pillow and asked for Ingo's help. Elly Flippen is Ingo's niece, and she has more stories than we have time to get into this hour. But okay, this is a really good one. It would be such a wonderful connection to have somebody who is so incredibly gifted as your relative and to be able to just pay attention and learn and take notes. Well, since we don't have that, I'm really thrilled to have the books and have that connection and to have listened to him on Art Bell years ago and to know that these abilities are part of all of us. It's a matter of just opening up your awareness and saying, okay, where do I start? And that's it. You don't have to take 50 billion courses and spend buku bucks. You can say, all right, I need to start playing with this. I need to start practicing. So this story is really fantastic. And I was when I saw the emails, I didn't know all the backstory completely about the couple that had the painting originally. But the Mother of Sorrows, Mary Mother of Sorrows, this painting has a really interesting circuitous route in being able to be tracked and possibly brought back to the family. So we were in the middle of the story, and the guy had approached this art dealer or art representative with, just like you said, I think he's going to contact you. And at first, he said, yeah, okay, fine. And so now he does contact. He contacts him. So what happens?
the very next day after my email.
Okay.
The very next day.
Uh-huh.
And but he's not read our curator's not read my email, so he is excited because now he has another piece to add to the show, and that's the premise of his email to me. Hey, Elly, by the way, there's this great painting that would be great for the show.
Oh.
And I say, okay, you mean the one that I emailed you about yesterday? But I don't say that. I just simply say, awesome. Here's the thing: we are on a really tight line with this, and this is the most serious negotiation you're ever going to do, and you cannot mess this up, right? You can't.
Yes.
You have to get this painting, and you have to negotiate it. And I know from my prior negotiations with the AVAM, this seller, that he wants a lot of money. But I also know what he ultimately, the way of the painting is, after the original purchaser passed away and it went to her husband, and then her husband passed away, it went to a family member who then gave it to a friend who then sold it to this purchaser. And it's this purchaser that you were dealing with, right? So I have tracked the transactions. So I know exactly how much he has paid for it. I know how much it's worth. So I can say to our curator, this is what I think he will take, and I think this is what we can buy it for.
Mm-hmm.
And he expertly, because he works with an auction house, negotiates the sale, handles the transaction, gets the painting, and then is able to include it in the La Mama show, a remote view, whereas it's for the first time on public display.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing then it will be going to the my mom turned around, purchased it, and then donated it to the AVAM, in which then we, after the La Mama show concludes, we put it into our minivan and we drive it down to Baltimore and turn it over to the American Visionary Art Museum. And when they knew it was coming back, their founder and director, Becca Hofberger, began conceptualizing an entire show around this one painting, and it ultimately was called The Great Mystery Show, and this painting was the centerpiece of that show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and see, that's just a fantastic story. For one thing, the book, Ingo Swann, The Wendy Song, which is the recent one, a novel of reincarnation, talks about just things that connections that we have when we remember, and talks about the potential of having reincarnation and what happens when you come through as a child with your memories pretty much intact, and everybody else around you kind of, well, okay, fine, and some people believe, some people don't, but there are indications that there's more to this story. I love the story, and I also like the fact that Ingo Swann is definitely working a little bit of magic here from beyond and between the lines, and in making these connections work, and that to me says we have inspiration around us at all times from those who we do not see, but who might be inspiring us. You need to turn left. No, turn left now. You need to make a sale. You really can't afford to have this painting. This painting is dragging you down. It's making you depressed. Every day looking at that painting, you just don't feel good about it. Don't you want to sell it? Yeah, you want to sell it. Here's a guy you want to sell it to. So I'm just picturing him like, the one on your left shoulder or right shoulder saying, yes, you want to sell it. The other one, who's your representative, says, I think he's right. You need to sell it. Okay? I have this whole dynamic going on with lots of invisible friends that help me. So I kind of appreciate the other windows of knowing that Ingo represents and tells you about. And with this, it's the entire process of getting that painting where you're going, it was so easy. Why did we have this train wreck all of a sudden with a character who's difficult to work with? But that's life. And it worked out. The train wreck was supposed to be there. He wanted it. He had a price. But see that you kept pursuing it and kept thinking, all right, and you followed through. I like the fact that you emailed the guy, and the next day he says, oh, by the way, we found this. And you're going, yeah. Oh, that one. Oh, really? Okay, cool.
I think Ingo would say that doors open and close for a number of reasons, and you may not understand it when it's happening at that particular point, but you will after you're through them.
Yeah.
Understand.
Yeah.
And you can't appreciate it because you're in the middle of it, but you can, upon looking back, look at that experience and say, I had to go through that experience for a particular reason, for a particular set of knowledge or insight or whatever it may be, moving chess pieces around a board to ultimately get to your end game, right? Your road isn't always straight. It deviates and goes in different directions. But there's always a reason, he would say, and that there is always light even in darkness.
Nick Cook is coming out with the newest book, and this is a retrospect of a lot of his works that he had that were in file folders, and a continuation. You said it also includes some of the stuff from Psychic Literacy that combines that work. And this is going to be available, and it's a whole 500 pages. Is it little print?
No, it's actually larger. It's larger print, and it's got kind of a complicated concept because you have Nick's narrative at the beginning of the end, bookending this. Then you have Ingo's great concept called Resurrecting the Mysterious, which also has an intro and an end. And in between are these two manuscripts that Nick has renamed The Hidden Revelation and then Beyond the God's Devices.
Okay.
So these two things inside this narrative that ties them together, and then Nick's at the end, bookending the whole entire thought.
That's so cool. So Ingo Swann's Lost Works. And so if you had thought that you had everything down about Ingo Swann, no. Here's a whole different room. And not only that, like, a mansion with the big, huge, ginormous rooms that have hidden doors and all that good stuff. This is fantastic. So, all right, so that'll be available. And then Nick is also doing the presentation. So where's the presentation with the International Remote Viewing Convention?
So it will be online, and you can find the link on IRVA, which is the International Remote Viewing Association's conference webpage.
Okay. And so one way or the other, more new information from Ingo Swann. And if you ever were curious and wanted to improve your own abilities, whether it's PK or psychic knowing, remote viewing, all of that, Ingo Swann is a tremendous resource. Even after he's no longer in the physical, he is still teaching, he's still working. And if you want to hear from him, just ask, hey, Ingo, what do you think? Can you help me? He's listening. Elly Flippen is with me talking about her uncle, Ingo Swann, Uncle Ingo. I feel like I know him just because of reading the information and having these little connections with. I was walking through the house thinking about, and I didn't realize this at the time, I was thinking about Ingo, and I think it was when we were doing some work, I was preparing either reading the book or getting, I think the Wendy song was there, but I don't think I had the Purple Fables, which was what I was looking at. And all of a sudden I had a card in my hand and it dropped on the floor, like somebody had pulled the card out of my hand and dropped on the floor. And I thought, because then I had a few other things that were happening, like a connect with owls and something that was supposed to be said about a piece of artwork and the book Cosmic Art that he worked on. And so I was having these little nudges and I wasn't paying any attention. And finally I said, oh my gosh, I realized what I had been thinking about, what I had been reading. I thought, that's Ingo Swann. And he said, light bulb. Okay, about time. He has a sense of humor. I have a vision of him just sitting in his, in an easy chair with a cigar, and that was when I got that he really missed his cigars. And I thought, well, I don't know what that's about. And then I opened the book, and I can't remember, but at the beginning of the book, it was something about him smoking, with a cigar, and I'm like, well, darn, that's that's it. That's the image. There he is. And then he said that, where he's at right now, the cigars aren't there, and that's just too darn, that's bad. It's just not the same. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you, that I had no idea about the cigars until I read that little blurb at the beginning of one of the books. And I thought, well, no wonder he was trying to give me these messages and trying to say, keep doing this. And finally, when I got that thing pulled out of my hand, I'm like, what the heck? And said, oh, I bet that's Ingo. And it was like, yeah, light bulb, duh. It's about time.
Yes, it does. There's actually, there's a great video, and might still be up on YouTube, where he's speaking to this UFO group in New Jersey. They would meet at a library, and somebody filmed this presentation. And literally, he's like a stand-up comedian. I mean, he has that room in stitches. He's commanding the room. He, some people are saying things to him, and he is putting them in their place, not in a bad way, but you know, like I this is me. I don't know about you guys, but I know who I am, and
Yes.
and I'm the comedian in this room, not you guys, and it is hilarious.
He knows his stuff. He's not intimidated. He doesn't, if somebody doesn't believe it, that's their problem, not his. It's, you know, and at the same time, it's that thing of, if you want to learn something, then pay attention. If you don't, I don't care. I don't, you know, this isn't no sweat off my back. I got this stuff down pat, and I've got a few things that I can share with you if you're interested. And if you're not, I understand you have your own life, so go forth and prosper. But, you know, I love that. And it's kind of a dry, and just I've been there, done that sense of humor of, this is the way it works. If you're interested, hey, glad to have you along. If not, move on. You're fine. You know, no good, no bad, just move on along.
Yes, there's an interview he did very, very late in the game in his life with a person who's writing a book about extraterrestrials, and this author has captured their conversation back and forth, and it would have you in stitches. So Ingo's not answering a question, and the author is saying like, well, but you asked me to interview you, and he said, well, that's because you asked if you wanted to interview me. Right? like it's this back and forth, and if I could read it to you, it would be just hilarious. I'll find that so you could share it with your listeners. It's
I love
it. Fun exchange between the two of them, and it's really Ingo, and it's like sort of cantankerous, but really putting it back at the author. It's so funny.
Well, and part of that is, here's a guy who had to deal with the CIA. So you've got all this linear mindset that he's been around the block a time or two trying to get these guys to at least consider that what he's doing isn't magic, that it isn't a hocus pocus, that it isn't mumbo jumbo, because that's what he's put up with. And then they have documentation to prove that he knew what he was talking about, that he was bringing forth evidence they could apply in terms of the math, the numbers, the things they needed to quantify what he was doing. Now, whether that program still exists in some shape or form, we don't really have to know, because we can assume just because there's no information about it doesn't mean it was ever really stopped, because they got results. What they can do with a program like that after getting results is deep six it, because then nobody needs to know, and you don't have any accountability when you're not reporting on something. So there's a whole different way that can go. And I think the fact that they work with so many people who were gifted, Pat Price, there were some others who were part of that program who were very, very, I think, incredibly talented with working with their PSI gifts and that, or their awareness, their abilities, and that part of it, he was able to kind of state, this is how it works, the parameters, and these are the goals you can achieve if you follow this protocol. There are some wonderful pieces of information that he brought forth that said that this is something that exists and it's real. And if you pay attention and you stop listening to all the people who are naysayers and critics because they haven't done it, not that they can't do it, but they haven't, and they don't care to, and they want other people to believe that line, then you do your own self a disservice by not applying what you can do and trusting that, well, if he can do it, I can too. Where do I start? And then Ingo says, start here right now. Mm-hmm. Take the card out of your hand and drop it on the floor. Okay, pay attention.
Pay attention. And going back, remembering the Stargate remote viewers were people who were picked out of different units that were career military officers. These weren't, let's find 1-800 psychic people. These were people in a branch of the Army, the Air Force, what have you, that were pulled aside and Ingo trained in saying, I can train anybody. And he proved that. Yeah. And that says that you don't have to have this history of having had experiences, because it's already there.
Yes.
You just need to learn how to use it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I like, because before we started this, I had that little sentence that said, it's applied knowing. And so with that right there, it isn't artificial. It's something, not a class you have to buy somewhere else. It's taking something that's already within you and applying that to the situation and the scenario. What he gives you are the symbols, basically the code, a thought plane of working with all the things that might prevent you from using this knowledge, like somebody saying, you're just lucky, oh, you're just guessing, or that isn't real. All the discounts and the disclaimers saying that you can't do it, you have to get rid of that out of your mind and say, well, what can I do? And then go from there. And that's what Ingo, I believe, is putting out, is saying, use it, try it, begin, act. Don't just allow someone else's opinion or perception color your reality. Does that make sense?
It does, and it does. And if I bring it back to the Wendy song, the novel,
yes,
what I found for me that resonated was a story of things that are happening to people all the time, that people are discounting or ignoring or not paying attention to. But Dr. Ian Stevenson at the University of Virginia documented all of these cases of reincarnation in children and what a real situation it is and what happens in families when this is coming out. Because you have a young person having memories of an entirely different life and people and circumstances, and how they wrap their mind around that. Because these experiences are coming out of young children.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And what that means and how, and then of course you have this societal, oh my gosh, what's wrong with my child? What's wrong with me that my child is acting this way? And I think you could take that and explode it out and use that as an example for almost anything that somebody is experiencing that is not, quote, normal. And Ingo would say normal is abnormal.
What I wanted to say, too, in the book, because this deals with a scenario where a little girl is convinced that she has two sons in another town, which is not too far away. But she's convinced she has two sons. She remembers the names. And so she tries to track them down. And everybody around her is saying, no, this can't be. And there's a psychiatrist who's brought into the equation, a doctor, the country doctor who has seen a thing or two and heard a thing or two and doesn't go public with it, but knows a thing or two. And the psychiatrist who has a different way of viewing things and knows that those things aren't true and those things can't happen because it isn't in the DMSO or whatever. This doesn't exist, and this is what we call people who believe things like this. So there you go. Now you might know which character I'm not real fond of. Anyway, that's a linear way of seeing things because it's all been written somewhere by somebody way back in, DC, BC, whatever, and it must still be true because nothing changes ever. That would be counter to evolution. But those kinds of things in this book, he brings from very potential real life scenarios to give you an idea of how this might play out if someone were to experience it and what might happen within that community of support and non-support. And then there's the fact that she's so attached to a little brother who is there's this incredible, I'm getting goosebumps. Okay. And there's a reason. And so this reincarnation element, he does in a delightful story. And it's really, it's not going to take you very long because this book is only about 126 pages or so. And telling you how this could play out. And I love the ending. We're not going to go there. I love the ending, but that was like, oh my gosh. Wow. Don't you dare, if you're listening, don't you dare read it first. That is not fair. Okay. So just read the book and you'll like it better. But yeah, I just have to say that. Okay. I know some people jump to the end. Oh, I want to read the book. I'll read the ending. Okay. Yeah. I want to read don't do that this time. Just do yourself a favor. But yeah, I love the way he did the story and the ending made the whole thing. So, just from a gentle reader, because I really like him, I think the story works.
I think too, and we're actually having it made into an audiobook, which I hope that readers will appreciate.
Oh, good. Well, and I want the Purple Fables. I want a new redo with that with images, because it's they're different stories and they have an impact. You One has to do with a psychic, a child, the fate and destiny of a traveling clairvoyant. And
Yeah.
this one, I like that. I hope that we are beyond where this fable goes. But it is a very telling story and an interpretation of where our society is before the psychic renaissance that's happening with this kind of knowing. Would you the backstory on the Purple Fables? This I think is a cool a cool backstory as well.
Sure. So in 1991, he says he woke up 4 days in a row and he was directed to write one of these fables, one in each of the consecutive 4 days. These were given. He says they were given to him, and basically he was the scribe in bringing these out to the world.
And that's why I think the visuals would be really cool, just because it's the way that they're presented. And even if it would be, as we have, YouTube with the wonderful something that would give you an interactive experience where you're looking at the video going along and telling the story of the characters. I think there's a lot of room to expand on this information. And you don't have, I think, you probably have a personal life. But you also have a whole lot of work cut out for you if you want to, continue going forward with all of this information, putting out in workbooks, putting it out in videos, putting it out in a teaching archive of 2 or 3 presentations, different chapters. There's so much work with this, the potential, because I think he's left a lot of breadcrumbs that have a lot of meat and give people a real solid way of connecting with their own abilities. And that's, I think, really what he wanted to do, was to leave a stepping stone to that next level of higher awareness, where you are not disconnected, but you are connected with everything here. And doing that is just saying, where do I start? Where do I start? And that's what he's done, is given a starting point, a jumping off point, a stepping point of going up and in and beyond where we are with looking at everything and saying it's just what it is on the surface. That is so missing the point.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then I would say Resurrecting the Mysterious is the first step, psychic literacy the second step, and Everybody's Guide to Natural ESP the third.
Oh, yes. Everybody's Guide to Natural ESP. Okay, so there you go. The 3 steps. Now I want to ask you one more question. ETs, aliens.
Yes. Yeah.
What was his perspective?
Well, he says he remote viewed them. He interacted with them. He says he has experiences with them. He was very involved in the abductee community in and around New York City. So he is definitely tuned in, if you will, to ETs.
Training. Did he feel like some of his information came from that area?
I don't think so. I mean, he was an avid studier of everything back to the late 50s. And at that point, occult work, he was a huge student of that. I mean, his library alone, when those books were at the University of West Georgia, was 3,500 different books, many of them rare, one of the only ones left in print that the university now holds in their special collection. So he is just an absorber of so much information. And then with people, he is an interactor with people. I mean, he interacted with the homeless on the street, shop owners, royalty, Hollywood, politicians, high-ranking politicians, everyday people. I mean, he is just a student of life.
Did he give you, and as he was declining and you are around him, did he give you any indication of what he hoped that you would do personally in your life?
No, that would have been awesome.
Oh, darn that guy. He didn't want a spoiler out there, did he? Because you said, he didn't like to tell people the future or whatever if he could, because then they would manifest it. But he could have left you a really nice thing that you could manifest.
Yeah, he did not do that. He did tell me, very early on, he used to throw these wild parties in the 60s, and he said that Truman Capote came and hit on him, and Tennessee Williams would come. And, I mean, it was just whatever culture at the time.
Yeah.
We'd come to his parties, and he said he made this wonderful punch, and it was 3 alcohols. And he told me, but I really didn't pay attention. I was in my 20s. I didn't really pay attention. And I have now spent a great deal of time trying to remember what that recipe was. And just 'cause he said it was like toxic, but so awesome.
It took you to a higher plane, huh?
Right. To figure out what that was. And so, interestingly, I don't know that we've shared this previously, but in the 70s, he wrote a number of adult novels under assumed names. And those 2 are at the University of West Georgia, but also at one archived at the University of Southern California. And in that, which was a little hard to stomach reading because it's pretty graphic,
Yeah.
pornographic, was actually a recipe for this punch. And I said, I found it!
Oh, hilarious. Hilarious. Well, but, the sexual literacy, he didn't shy away from the topic. That was one thing he also thought enhanced your abilities. Being fully human to be fully divine, basically, is where that's going. You have to accept all of you as part of this incarnation, and you're connecting in different ways. And some of the psychic experiences can be euphoric. It's just when you're connected on that level, then there's this euphoria that can come with that. And I think, he also implied that is a very natural and normal part of being human.
Sure. I mean, there's a whole book, Psychic Sexuality.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think I called psychic literacy. Okay, fine.
Oh, okay.
I was close.
But he does go a little bit into that. Yes. I mean, he does discuss it in that book and Resurrecting the Mysterious, but he really explores it in Psychic Sexuality.
Okay, yeah. So part of this is coming to terms with being fully human and being able to tap into your abilities, your knowing, without letting somebody else discount or derail you as being someone who should be ashamed of showing up. And that's part of it. A lot of this has to do with discounting and trying to devalue these abilities because it frightens people. That's really plain and simple. When you know something that somebody else would prefer that you do not know, you are intimidating. So that's beyond frightening. That's also, what else do you know? And do you want everybody to know how to do this? Because then we might have to be honest. We can't be deceptive. Light bulb.
Right.
That's what Ingo's telling you.
Right. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and then again, you also don't want to tell everybody what you know because that could get you in big trouble. So you just be very, very cautious with who you tell and what you tell, and pretend, I really don't know a whole lot unless you want to ask me a question. Then be prepared because you may not want to know the answer, but we'll go from there. How's that? Anyway,
Absolutely.
I don't know.
Absolutely.
I love him. I think he's got a great sense of humor. I think he's got tremendous, tremendous gifts that he is sharing, and he has given a wonderful legacy that you are sharing and allowing people to tap into to go the next step in their own psychic ability, their evolution. And I think the psychic renaissance is happening right now.
And he would say, go experience it for yourself.
Is there anything else? The books are available, ingoswann.com. Is there anything else coming up? Are you going to rework that documentary?
We're contemplating it. Yes. There is so much footage, and a number of people have actually passed away since they were filmed too. So it's telling the right story in the right way. Okay. And I think the right time will happen when that comes together.
I do too. We learn as we live, and it doesn't matter that someone has passed away. It's the fact that they had some pieces of the equation because they lived it, not because they read a book and not because they learned and took notes and took somebody else's stuff. It's because they went through the motions and in the trenches to figure out, how does this work for me? And that's how we connect our own dots. So, all right, Elly Flippen. ingoswann.com is the website, and you can also get the book available as soon as the event is finished at the International Remote Viewing Conference, right?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah.
Okay, the name of the book again, because I totally spaced it.
Resurrecting the Mysterious, Ingo Swann's Great Lost Work.
something to look forward to. And I will be paying attention because Ingo still has his own ways of checking in. Because I'm doing my homework and I ask for help, okay? Shame on me. But because sometimes it can get a little bit challenging trying to connect the dots. Was that a connect? Is I supposed to listen to that? And yeah. And so then something will go missing. You'll know, yeah, that was a dot. There it was, and it went. I need to write it down. So keep a journal if you're doing this, and you'll find out that you do make progress, and you'll find out some interesting ways that things are synchronized as you learn more about what is here beyond what we see with our physical eyes. And Elly, I appreciate your time. I so love what you're doing. You have a wonderful window into the world and the universe with your uncle, and he's fully present in his own special, unique, cantankerous way. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing us to share this with you.
Instacart shoppers know groceries. They know that you can't make guacamole with rock-hard avocados. They know how to quickly find those peanut butter pretzels you can never find. And they keep you in the know by giving you updates about your order along the way. Let Instacart shoppers help take shopping off your plate so you can get time and energy back for what really matters. Visit instacart.com or download the app to get free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum order $10. Additional terms apply. Instacart. Add life to cart.
Ay, mija, abuelita's on her way and I still need to shop for the party.
No worries. Let's order through Instacart.
¿Insta qué?
Sí, Emma. We can order groceries and more online and get everything delivered in as fast as an hour.
Everything for dinner? Carne, tortillas, limas, plátanos.
Claro. Anything else?
Just make sure the plátanos are ripe.
Get groceries delivered same day with Instacart so you have more time for family. Visit instacart.com or download the app to get free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum order $10. Additional terms apply.